yourself, they said the next episode would be Spyro, right? Well, folks, this isn't Spyro. We're sorry. We will be covering that game, but one of our guests hasn't had the time to finish up a playthrough yet. The real world will always trump playing video games, but don't worry, we will get to it.
You just
Until
lost so
then,
many listeners.
Oh, maybe. I was a little concerned because a lot of people were excited about Spyro.
Were they really? That's cool. I like Spyro.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of messages about it. So I have completed my playthrough. I've already written up all my thoughts and notes. So we decided to do something a little different.
You know what, Sean? If they're excited for Spyro, they better be excited for this one.
I hope so too, guys. This is episode 24 of Superannuated Starman, and we're going to be covering Contra. In a small departure from celebrating games that were released in 1993 and 1998, we're going to cover a game from 1988. If you owned or knew someone with a Nintendo Entertainment System, the original NES, you have probably played Contra. This game is celebrating its 35th year, and we decided to spend a little bit of time with you all today to talk about it. So I'm Sean Ryan, I'm your host, and as always, I'm joined by my two fantastic co-hosts. You've already heard them, but first up is Chris Duerksen.
He's dead. You killed him.
My mic just died.
You are such a professional.
Oh, I know, right?
So the other voice you heard is Cory Braucks. Cory, how are you doing?
I'm great. I am feeling old now. Thank you for the 35-year anniversary mention of Contra.
Yeah, it hits hard. So, Chris, your mic is back. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. I am super excited to talk about this game. This is going to be the longest history segment we've ever done. I did so much research on this game. So enjoy some music, and when we return, we're going to cover this game in its long and amazing history. Koji Hiroshita, a designer at Konami, was hard at work coming up with his next game idea. A fan of the 1980s action films and arcade games like Commando and Ikari Warriors, he wanted to develop his own run-and-gun game, but he didn't like the bird's-eye view camera's perspective and instead wanted a side-profile camera while allowing some stages of different perspectives in the form of the over-the-shoulder view to change things up. Released on February 2nd, 1988 in North America, and 1 week later on the 9th in Japan on the NES and Famicom respectively, Contra originally released 1 year earlier in February and March of 1987 in Japan, North America, and Europe in the arcades. The name Contra was politically charged at this point in history due to the Iran-Contra scandal during the Reagan administration. And this is where I was a little hesitant to add this part to the history about the game. What I'm talking about are some of the not so subtle references about the scandal that were laid out in this game.
Oh, like what could you be talking about?
Well, I wasn't going to talk about them, but there's some pretty interesting background information, and it really adds to the game's history. In 1985, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North diverted funds, from the Iranian weapon sales to a right-wing rebel group in Nicaragua known as the Contras. The Contras were opposed to the Sandinista National Liberation Front of Nicaragua. During their war against the Nicaraguan government, the Contras committed numerous human rights violations and used terroristic-like tactics. They were especially known for their guerrilla warfare and made use of jungles for cover and stealth. It may be coincidence the first level of the game is set in a jungle, but it's certainly no coincidence that the music that plays during the credits of the game is titled Sandinista, which, as I mentioned, is the name of the political party that they tried to overthrow. Because of this, When the arcade version was ported to several computers of the time, including the Amstrad, the ZX Spectrum, and the Commodore 64, as well as several other computer systems, it received a name change to Grisor to avoid any controversy.
Controversy.
Although it wasn't mentioned on the Wikipedia page, this game is available through Xbox Live. Released on the 17th of December 2007, it will cost you a whopping $2.50. Alternatively, you can pick up the Contra Anniversary Collection, which was released in June of 2019 for Konami's 50th anniversary, which includes various Contra games from the arcade, the NES, the SNES, the Sega Genesis, and the Game Boy for $20 digitally. But you can also find it through Best Buy for the PS4 and Nintendo Switch for $35 if you want a physical copy. Best Buy also has the Castlevania collection as well for the same price, and I highly recommend picking them both up so that you'll always own some of the greatest games of those generations. But back to the history, as I previously mentioned, Contra was originally an arcade game, and due to its unbelievable worldwide success, it was one of the top 4 highest grossing arcade games of 1987 in the US. And for anybody wondering, it was Sega's Outrun that was the highest grossing game in not only North America, but in every territory by a wide margin. And that game released at the tail end of 1986. There's a lot of information out there about the arcade version, but I'm mostly going to be sticking to the NES version as that's the one that most people are probably familiar with. Developed and published by Konami, Contra is a run-and-gun action game that has a 2D side-scrolling elements as well as a pseudo 3D view where the player moves towards the background. We have our 2 heroes, Bill Reiser, codenamed Mad Dog, and Lance Bean, codenamed Scorpion. Due to the graphical limitations of the NES, Bill and Lance lost their individualized character designs they had in the arcade, and instead, they were both depicted as shirtless commandos, only differentiated by the colors of their pants. Bill wearing blue and Lance wearing red. The player starts off with a default rifle with unlimited ammunition that can be upgraded into one of 4 other guns: the machine gun, the laser, the flamethrower, and the spread shot. There are also various power-ups that can assist the player, such as the power-up that increases the rate of fire and vulnerability that will protect you from all dangers except for falling into pits, and a falcon that once collected destroys all basic enemies on the screen.
Is that what that is?
That's what it is. And I'm going to take this next bit verbatim from the Wikipedia entry because it's kind of confusing. And this talks about the NES version compared to the arcade version. The NES version recomposes the 7 stages of the arcade version into 8 stages. Stages 2 and 3 were combined into one stage, resulting in the renumbering of the waterfall level from stage 4 to stage 3, while stages 5 and 6 were combined into a new stage 4. The final 4 stages of the NES version, that's Snowfield, Energy Zone, Hangar, and Alien Lair, are based on the different areas in the arcade version's final stage. The level designs themselves are drastically different from the arcade version too. The 2 base stages, for example, stages 2 and 4, no longer have a maze-like structure, nor is there any time limit involved. The boss of the waterfall stage is also changed from a diamond-shaped sensor to an alien statue. Though only released 1 week later in Japan, the Famicom version underwent some major changes in development, resulting in the game having a different storyline. Whereas the NES takes place in 1957 in South America, the Japanese release of the game is set in the far future of 2633 on the fictional Galuga Archipelago near New Zealand. But the Japanese release also included some cutscenes between levels, and various stages include background animations like you may have seen in other Famicom titles like Doki Doki Panic and Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. Storyline aside, there's one major regional difference in the European version, which was released on December 28th of 1990, that changed the name of the game to Probotector, a combination of the words robot and protector. The 2 commandos were given the names RD-008 and RC-011 and changed to robots, as well as all other human enemies. This was done to circumvent the BPJM's censor laws in Germany, which prohibited the sale of violent video game content to minors. Bringing it back to the NES version, the box art specifically, the illustration was done by British artist Bob Wakelin, If you've seen it, you may have noticed some similarities between the game's protagonists and popular action film stars of the day. On the left, we have Bill, which looks strikingly like Arnold Schwarzenegger from Predator, and on the right, we have Lance, who people mistakenly assume looks like Sylvester Stallone from Rambo. However, this is actually another still of Arnold Schwarzenegger from the same film. However, there was some Japanese promotional art that they did take a still from Sylvester Stallone's Rambo First Blood Part 2 and recreated that with Bill posing in front of one of the alien eggs. And this part I found to be really, really interesting. On the cover of the art, you can clearly see what is the xenomorph from the popular film franchise Alien. Speaking of Alien, there's even more ties than just the film-inspired alien creature. Our two protagonists, Bill Reiser and Lance Bean, owe their names to some famous actors. Bill's full name is a tribute to the actors Bill Paxton and Paul Reiser. Lance's full name is a tribute to the actors Lance Henriksen and Michael Bain. These four actors coincidentally played the roles of Private Hudson, Burke, Bishop, and Corporal Hicks in the 1986 sci-fi film Alien. Before I wrapped up this game's history, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Konami code. Gradius, a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up, was actually the first game to use this code, but it was Contra that really popularized it. Up, up, down, down, left, right, BA start, and sometimes select start. For this game, by inputting this code on the title screen, you can start off the game with 30 lives instead of the default 3. That's all I've got, guys. I think I've been talking for long enough, so unless you have something.
But did you want to mention why they used the Konami code? Or why the Konami code became the Konami code?
Go for it. I don't know what you mean.
Oh, well, that was a programming code because these games are so tough that for playtesting, they wanted to add a way to let the playtesters actually make it through the game. So they added the Konami code so that way the playtesters had an easy way of getting multiple lives.
I did not know that. And that is awesome. And that makes perfect sense because this game is incredibly difficult. And we're going to talk about that when we come back and we explore our memories of Contra for the NES. Welcome back, everybody. And before I have Chris tell us about his memories, I have a question for the both of you. Did either of you ever see this game in the arcades? And if you did you play it before the NES port?
That was actually going to be my my intro. My childhood memories was that I remember this game on the arcade first. And Cory, go ahead and answer.
I did not ever recall seeing this in the arcade, honestly.
I didn't either. So, Chris, if you have those memories, why don't you just go ahead and get started and dive right in?
Alrighty. Like I just said, this was the game I remember first in the arcades, and I was young when this game out. When the game, I was 4 when the game came out, but by the time I was actually able to start playing stuff in the arcade, I was still, I don't know, 6 or 7, and as far back as I can remember, this was the game that I avoided because I learned very quickly. I died within the first 20 steps.
Just
not
eat
even
those
kidding.
quarters.
Yeah, not even kidding. Like I would put a quarter in, start the game, and I would not even make it past one screen of this game. And please keep in mind, I was a very young child. But yeah, this game was incredibly difficult. And I remember seeing it in multiple. I mean, like seeing it in arcades, seeing it in small town convenience stores, pizza places. Yeah, I mean, that pretty much sums it up. But
I have a question for you, Chris, and
yeah,
this is a question for you specifically because only you would have this memory. Was this game in the IGA in Homer?
no, I was trying to remember. I don't think it was. I think that was that was
Because
the other one that was
there was definitely an arcade unit there.
yeah, and that one had the knockoff. I mean, I don't know if I can't call it a knockoff, Contra clone basically, because we should. I mean, did we mention? I mean, this was kind of a pioneer of the run and gun games, wasn't it?
Well, there was plenty of bird's eye view format before, like I mentioned, Commando and
Right.
Akari Warriors.
But as
But
far
there
as
weren't
side scrolling,
many side-scrolling shooters that I can think of before 1988.
yeah. And I remember that. Yeah, the IGA I think had one that was also a side scroller one, but it was a little cartoonier. Um, man, and I want to say like you were trying to escape out of a POW camp or something. I can't remember. That one was less alienish. But anyways, as far as my memories go, playing this game in arcades, I avoided this game like the plague, and pretty much like unless this was the only game available, I never played it just because I learned really quickly it just ate your coins. And this was like when like at Boy Scout meetings and stuff, like when we had meetings like in arcades or not in arcades, but like in pizza places that had like a wall full of arcades games. Because back in the day, restaurants actually used to have like a wall full of games that you could play. This game was always empty. Nobody, or I mean, at least among us kids, like none of us played this game because it was just so ridiculously hard. And that was my lovely childhood memories of this game. I never owned it on NES. To be honest, I'm pretty sure I've never even rented it because I wasn't going to subject myself to that. So this was a true quarter eating game. What about you guys?
Cory?
Yeah, I don't recall if we owned this one, but somebody owned it. I'm almost certain my uncle had a copy of this because there were plenty of hours sunk into this game. All I do recall is like as Chris was saying, like the brutal difficulty of it. And playing it as an adult, it's not quite so bad, but playing it as a kid where like there's a lot of pattern recognition. And we've mentioned that before, like where Japan sort of makes that like the default difficulty by setting up a lot of, constant roadblocks like that where you have to just kind of time everything out. And if you screw up, you get shot and you die and you lose. So yeah, there's a lot of dying and a lot of like falling from the top of the screen. And I definitely played a lot of like 2-player with this one. So either with my brother or my uncle or whoever else was available at the time. A lot of time sunk on this one, and just very, very hard is really the most telling thing about it.
Can I
And
ask you a quick question?
yeah.
About two-player mode. Did you recognize did it get harder with two players or was it the same difficulty?
I don't think it was harder with 2 players. I think the only thing that the worst part about 2-player is, as I said, there's a lot of pattern recognition because the enemies are kind of just endless, right? Like depending on where you are on the screen, they'll just keep coming back or whatever.
Yeah.
So the only thing that sucks about 2-player is if both of you aren't like really pushing forward, you end
You
up
one
you end
one
up
stuck
sort
in the
of
spawn
like
spot.
having just a lot of like crap coming at you constantly. So especially if like one of you dies and falls off like the map and then you're coming down from the ceiling or whatever as you respawn, like it just becomes very hectic. And I think that might honestly add to the frustration of this game. But I certainly didn't beat it as a child, and I really don't know anyone that did. This is probably worse than Aladdin, but I think it was less of our time frame, because Aladdin was like what, 93, I think we mentioned, and this is 88, so this is a full 5 years before. And I think a lot of us as kids, like, were playing other things like, Mario or whatever at the time. So I don't think this was quite as popular, but it certainly is like one of the first like bullet hell kind of games where there's just this swarm of crap flying at you constantly and you're just having to deal with it, and it's honestly kind of a nightmare.
Yeah, you mentioned that you didn't know anybody as a kid that beat this game. Besides you two, I don't know anybody as an adult that's beat this game.
Yeah, I mean, that's not really a big topic for me to bring up with, honestly, but like, yeah, I really don't know too many people that have like been like, yeah, Contra's my favorite. I used to like beat it once a month or whatever.
I'm not even going to go ahead and claim that I've beaten it for reasons that I'll explain later on.
Yeah, brute your way through.
Yeah, absolutely. I had to. But was there anything else you wanted to add, Cory?
No, I mean, like I said, this is a very it's a very hazy period in my childhood. So like I certainly, looking at it as an adult, I can look at it and go, okay, I remember this level, I remember this level, I remember the art style. Like I remember, playing it. I just don't remember the game really. Like I don't remember ever beating it. One of the big things that sticks out as a kid, it's this side scroller thing, and then you finally get through like the first level, the jungle, and then there is the perspective shift, because now you're strafing left to right and you're shooting at things that are running across like an old school shooting gallery kind of deal. And I think that was one of the big differences, where it's like, okay, now we're going from pushing through a level almost like an endurance trial where you have to knock everything off the map.
And then it turns into like a cool little arcade shooter.
Yeah, it's just wild. Like it's a lot of things going on.
Now, one thing I didn't mention in my childhood memories, I do like I mentioned the fact that this game was, I remember seeing this in a lot of arcades, but like this game was super popular and everybody knew what Contra was. I mean, like it was a notorious game, but I swear I still remember seeing references to it in movies and seeing it in backgrounds and stuff. Like this game was totally mainstream back in the day.
My memories of this are a little different. If I had seen the arcade version of the game, I don't remember it. I also did not know that there was such a huge sci-fi bend to the game, especially in the later half of the game, because I just never got there as a kid.
Oh yeah, totally. Same here.
I think Contra is just one of those games that has this kind of universal knowledge about it, kind of like Super Mario Brothers. It's a game that everyone seems to be familiar with, and just about everyone I knew could get through the first stage of the NES fairly quickly, but the barrier for most of us was level 2 and beyond. That is, until we found out about the Konami code, and I don't remember how I found out about this game, but like Contra or Super Mario Brothers, the knowledge of the Konami code just kind of quickly became this wildfire that spread through my friend group and just kids all around. And I never beat the game as a kid, and there were other kids that had claimed to have beaten it, but I highly doubt it, just due to the brutal difficulty of this game.
This is the same kids whose dads worked at Nintendo. Let's be realistic.
These are the same kids that beat Battletoads.
Yeah, there's no way that's happening. And I kind of agree with what you were saying, Cory. You were saying that you didn't have like very vivid, specific memories of this game. I kind of have memories surrounding it. Like I remember going to birthday parties and all the kids playing Contra and just swapping the controller back and forth.
Every 30 seconds.
Right, yeah, like it's something like you recall, but it's not something you like you can, make up time and place where it's like, okay, yeah, that's totally a thing where we, I remember the summer of '86 we spent a month playing it and beat it.
Well, and also like as 8-year-olds, we all loved Mario and Ninja Turtle games, and we could all say, "Hey, my favorite video game is Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game." No kid I ever knew was like, "My favorite game is Contra. I love shooting stuff." Like
Well,
that just wasn't.
yeah, like, but it's just, I think it's just because there's not a really big, there's kind of a lack of personality. Like this is very 80s, like you look at the screen and like you said, it's very much You look at it and you kind of see Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone when you're looking at these two
Right.
guys.
And
And
I think they were also marketing towards older.
yeah, and
Like,
they're marketing towards like teenagers and adults kind of. But I mean, it is the fact that like this is kind of that era of the action movie where like Commando was a great film, and so was
For sure.
Rambo and True Lies and everything to an extent, and you had
Predator.
Predator.
True Lies.
Yeah, True Lies is a great film.
I never thought of it.
Granted, it's like
It's
mid-90s.
It's not peak Arnold, but I enjoy True Lies
There's
as well.
Tom
It
Arnold
is.
as the comedic relief in that. Like, it's a great film.
Can I just interrupt?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just beat it. I just now beat it. Woo!
Congratulations.
I just beat it.
But yeah, I mean, this is like the era of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you got Sylvester Stallone. Like, those are kind of the two biggest names. You've got like Jean-Claude Van Damme and Wesley Snipes, and it's kind of that era of like the 80s action film, and I think this kind of capitalized on that. And I think it's very generic because this certainly could fit any 80s action film.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the sci-fi part is what gets me the most, is that you have this, like you're talking about, this 80s action film, and then it just kind of flips to Alien midway.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the very weird twist on it. And I mean, again, it is Japan, for what that's worth. But I think it's kind of that era where it's like you were talking about how like, it's Bill Paxton and everything else. And, it's kind of Alien 2 and
kind of that Predator vibe.
Yeah.
Where Predator was very much a commando movie that turned into a alien thriller.
Yeah, it's an action film with kind of like this horror suspense because you're being hunted in the wilderness of a jungle, and Jesse Ventura has a machine gun.
God, I could talk about that film for hours.
But yeah, like I think the reason that we don't have really memories that stand out of this is because you can't look at it and say like, oh yeah, like there's that part where Mario gets hung up and you have to jump, and then you take the warp pipe through to the whatever level or something, or like there's the part where Samus gets to the end and you have to kill Ridley or whatever. It's like these are bulky guy A and B, and they're shooting a bunch of stuff, and you have to beat up generic bad guy and alien monster, and then you blow up the island at the end with a helicopter sunset.
That's a good point.
It's like Michael Bay made it.
There's nothing super iconic or definitive until you get to that very last stage, which, as most kids, are probably not going to get to.
Yeah, I don't think anyone as children like ever really got to like the creepy like H.R. Geiger monsters at the end. Like we all just kind of remember the hallways and like shooting bad guys and jumping around waterfalls and stuff.
Yeah, I remember the trees and the rocks and the 3 layers of grass that you can jump up and down, like, and just the onslaught of dudes. Like
the waterfall stage. I have vivid memories of the jungle. I remember the base, and I know I've been to the waterfall stage as a kid, but that's kind of where my memories end of the game.
Exactly. Like none of us have ever really gotten to the finale and been like, oh yeah, the big fight at the end where you blow up the base and you're shooting the monsters in the face, and you're just like, wait, what are you talking about? That doesn't sound like anything like Contra.
I've got a question for the two of you, and I was going to include this in our next segment, but I think it's kind of fitting here. Did either of you ever check out the manual?
No.
Okay, the reason I ask is because there's a section called Red Falcon's Defenses, and it has very simplistic, even kind of crude renditions of each of the stages, and in those renditions, it spoils the final boss.
Oh, really?
Yeah, pull up the manual and check it out. It's really interesting to look at. But are there any other memories that you guys want to share before we move on to the next segment?
My favorite 80s film is Demolition Man, for what it's worth.
Oh my God. Okay. I think that this is very off topic.
Well, it's kind of on topic.
I could start a whole nother podcast and just talk about Demolition Man for 2 hours, longer than the runtime of the film. I love that film. But I don't.
What is your favorite 80s action movie?
It's Demolition Man, but I don't want to get talking about that. So
What is Chris's though?
Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
You are a disappointing person. You could have said Die Hard. You could have said Top Gun. You could have said
I don't think of Top Gun as an action.
You could have
movie.
said RoboCop.
Really?
Or Terminator. Top Gun's definitely an action movie.
For sure.
See, I think of it more as a.
You could have said Escape from New York or Lethal Weapon.
No, Escape from New York. Isn't that 90s?
No, that's Escape from LA.
How about Big Trouble Little China?
Or Conan.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
All right, we're getting way off topic.
First Blood. You do First Blood.
But he brought it back to Arnold.
Let's take a short break, and when we get back, we're going to discuss Contra in 2023. I played this game on the Contra Anniversary Collection for Switch, and I tried to see how far I could get by going legit. That is only 3 lives. And let me tell you guys, I did not get very far into the game. I can get through the jungle stage without dying easily. Like I said in my memories of the game, the jungle stage was just as familiar to me as Super Mario Bros. 1-1, but quickly the difficulty ramps up, and I tried a few times, but eventually I said, this isn't going to happen without a little bit of help. So in goes the Konami code, and I got my 30 lives, and I just prayed that that would take me to the end of the game.
Did it?
No, it did not.
Yeah, I was totally going to ask, did either of you guys, like, even with the Konami code?
I spent probably the better part of a week, like, beating this game, like, legitimately.
Oh, awesome. I was not able to.
You beat this game legit?
Yeah, it effing sucked, but I'll tell you, I finished it.
When you say
wow, I think you're the king.
With 3 or 30 lives?
With 3, like playing.
Oh my god,
yeah,
for real?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time, like an embarrassing amount of time playing.
That is impressive. That is unbelievably impressive.
Yeah,
because I could not beat it with 30.
So I do know one person that has beat.
It was very hard. I will tell you that much.
Well, yeah. I mean, I didn't like, even with the Contra code, I wouldn't be able to beat this game. I used the snot out of save states, like a lot, like way more than 30. Like it got to the point in the last couple levels where like every like every screen I was making a save state. Like,
well, let's talk about those levels, because the first stage, the jungle, is very easy. Once you manage to get down the physics,
easy
and
compared
mechanics,
to the rest of them. Like
I think it's just an easy stage. The whole game is very, very short, but the jungle especially is incredibly short.
The easiest part about the jungle is if you just continue to move forward and occasionally jump, like you can pretty much make it through the level.
And the boss at the end of the stage, if you even want to call it that, is just a giant wall.
Yeah.
With a little dude, at the top.
It has like 2 turrets that you have to knock out, and then after that, you just shoot at the door until it blows up.
Yeah, but I like the little guy on the top,
But after you do blow that up, it's stage 2, the base. And this is immediately interesting because of that camera shift that we talked about earlier. It's no longer that 2D side to side, and instead it's the over the shoulder view. And one of my biggest issues with this, and I want you guys' thoughts on this too, it wasn't getting hit by the enemies. It was accidentally hitting up. while moving
Yes.
left to right. And if you
Yeah.
do that, for those of you that don't know, there's a little electric beam in front of your character. And if you
Yeah.
hit up, you
Yeah,
will
you
touch it.
zap yourself.
Yeah, it momentarily paralyzes you, making you vulnerable. It doesn't hurt you, but
It
it
makes you
makes you
invulnerable, actually.
really.
Yeah. Your enemies like I was watching a speed run for this game, and the speedrunner was using those fences to not get hit by enemy fire
Oh,
because it makes you it doesn't kill you, so you still keep your power ups, but I don't know
well,
what it does. Like, I mean, it stuns you, and you can't move and you can't shoot, but bullets apparently pass right through you. I did not test that out myself because
well. Then let me rephrase. When I say makes you vulnerable, like you said, you're frozen in place, and if a bullet is coming your way, the second that you do have control again, you could be stuck, and you're just going to get hit
yeah.
almost no matter what.
But if you time it right, it gives you iframes. So that way, if you purposely hit that little electric thing right before the bullet hits you, you don't have to worry about getting out of the way of the bullet.
That's interesting, and I didn't even think about that because there are some sections that I did damage boost my way through because I had to. Which, Cory, I cannot wait to hear your like intense thoughts on like what stage you felt was the most difficult and everything because I just took it for granted that I had 30 lives.
Yeah, it was a bit of a trial. I will say that much. I God, I don't even know what the hardest one was. Maybe the waterfall.
Well,
Um,
that's the next level. Before we get to the next
yeah,
level,
it's
can I
well,
just
it's either
say
either the waterfall or like the machine shop with all the stupid things coming down
the
constantly.
energy zone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Brutal. But Chris, what was your thought about stage two?
So stage two, which is known as base one, we talk about the camera shift. Out of all these, like the old Nintendo games, I love when games switch it up like that. Like I love the fact that it switches from a side scroller to a arcade style shooter, and even as a kid, like I don't know, it's just a cheap trick that always got my attention that I just loved because it felt like two games is one sort of thing. And I love when companies do that stuff. Just kind of give it the game, give the game more flavor.
I agree. It makes things interesting. And segueing into level three, which is the waterfall, it's now this vertical scroller. So you're
Oh
no
my god,
longer
yeah, I
going,
didn't even think about that.
yeah, you're no longer going left to right. Now you're going from the base of the waterfall all the way to the top. And even though it's not a perspective shift, it does shake up the formula like you're talking about.
Yeah, that's genius. I didn't even put that together, but it did for some reason. That level, the waterfall level, reminded me of Mario 2, like for
Yep.
some reason.
Yeah. Well, it's very similar in a lot of ways because Mario 2, or at least Super Mario USA, as it's known in Japan, Super Mario 2 for us in North America, it has a lot of verticality,
Hmm.
whereas Mario 1 didn't have virtually any.
Yeah.
And the waterfall, I think, is kind of that point in the game where it's been pretty grounded in reality up to this point. And then once you get to the top of the waterfall, you fight this giant alien head with flailing arms.
Yeah, that's where also you see your first badass alien. You're like, whoa.
Cory,
And when I
what
say
made
badass, yeah, I mean like it was like because that was the first one that's like what big alien teeth. I mean like the head of the alien is
it's
four times the
huge.
size as you, and it's got big sharp teeth, and it's got the arms that come out or doesn't it have the arms or something?
It does.
Yeah, like
And
tentacles, I
yeah, you have
guess.
to shoot at him in order to kill him. And in the arcade, it's a completely different boss. It's basically another fortress essentially with gun turrets and a little diamond that you have to shoot out.
Which
But
would have made sense because that leads to another base.
oh yeah, good point. Cory, what made the waterfall so hard for you?
Um, I think it's just it's so hectic in a sense. There's a lot of like you
I
said, it's
agree.
all upward verticality. So like you're kind of going in blind a lot of the way. And there's just like constantly stuff flying at you, and it's just this kind of upward thing where there's guys coming from the side of the screen constantly.
Both
And
sides of the
yeah,
screen,
and
yeah.
like you're having to the fact that you're having to kind of do your somersault upward jump, like you're kind of focusing on moving and not so much shooting. So I don't know. It's just I was getting overwhelmed quite frequently, honestly,
And
in the initial couple of playthroughs.
and it also features your favorite feature where once you move up, and then if you miss a jump, you fall to your death.
Yeah, not only that, but it's also like when you move up, you also are losing the screen as well. So like if you go up, you really can't go back down.
Yeah,
So
that's what I mean. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
like
if
you can't, like, you have to decide the path that you're going to go as you're going. And it was one of those things where it's like, God, if I screw this up, like I'm gonna have just a nightmare of a day.
I was just gonna say, I remember there's right before you get to the very top, there was one jump that I kept missing over and over because it was just far enough where like you could either go left and up, but I think there's something stopping me from going left and up, or that, or I think it was just out of reach, and so instead you had to jump right and up onto this tiny little platform, and you had to like make it just. It was like the exact amount of length that you could jump.
In the traditional Japanese fashion, like there's a right way to do things, and there is the, punishing method of, oh, I went the wrong way, time to die now, so it's just one of those things.
There's also a really annoying enemy that's like a guy in scuba gear that
In the waterfall.
somehow he's able to tread water in the waterfall. You cannot shoot him until he rises
you
out of
pass
the
him.
water.
Yeah.
And then starts firing at you. So he's there. You're probably going to get chewed up by him, and you just have to go for it. And
it's
so
also one
stressful.
of those things, like at some point you just try to bypass him. Like you don't even want to deal with him, It's just like, if I could just get around this stupid guy, like I could just keep moving forward and be done with this.
Eventually you get to the top and you defeat that alien creature, and then you move into base 2.
Well, so quick sidebar here.
Okay.
What gun power up did everyone use?
Spread.
Okay.
Spread all day.
All right. Yeah. So for the listeners at home, there are several power-ups. You have your like automatic rifle at the beginning, and then you have the machine gun, which makes you shoot faster, and you have the laser, which is, a laser. And then you have the spread shot, which is like, I think it's a 5-shot arc. And it basically, gives you this shotgun effect, and it's really the only way to beat this game.
Don't forget
you
the fire.
also had the
worst. Yeah, there's the fire one, which is like a really stupid. It's like two shots that comes out of the barrel, and they're like kind of an orbiting thing. So like you have these 2 bullets, and they make like a circle flying out of the gun, and they kind of swirl away in front of you, and it looks like a little fire flower effect.
Have either of you ever played Fester's Quest?
No.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a weapon power up very similar to it. I owned Fester's Quest as a kid. It's a terrible game. I don't even want to get into it, but as soon as I picked that up accidentally, I was like, oh my God, this is why I don't ever do this. But yeah, the spread shot is the way to go. Especially when... Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to ask, what's the deal with the laser?
It's just a single beam that shoots out directly in front of you.
It's just a big long laser, and you just pew pew pew.
Because everything dies in one hit anyways.
I think it's more for like sustained damage on bosses more than anything, but it's just not effective. It's really
something. Did the laser go through people? Did it like could it kill multiple people at once?
I think it had piercing. I really just didn't experiment with it much. Like it's just
not
a good weapon.
Yeah, it was machine gun or spread shot. That's all I was gonna deal with.
Yeah.
But once you get there, you're now in base 2. Playing through this a couple of times, once you know the room setup, it's pretty easy. And this is something I found out during research, and I wish I had known this as a kid. because this would have made it so much easier. In stages 2 and 4, those base levels, the pseudo 3D ones, if you're playing single player and you lie down, you can push up on the second controller to aim your shot higher or lower as if you were standing.
Huh, that's cheating.
That would have been extremely useful for destroying targets while you're still staying relatively safe. There are some things that can still come at you, like there will be these little rolling bombs that they just kind of throw at you like a bowling ball.
Yeah, but you can shoot those.
Yeah, you can shoot them and that's it. But most of the other guns are still shooting at that chest height. But if you're lying down,
yeah, laying down is the way to go. Like it's really the only way to get through a lot of the over the shoulder levels.
For sure. And I think that base 2 was easier than base 1. At least for me it was.
Yeah. Same.
Finishing up base 2, you have another boss that is just a couple gun turrets, and then you have these floating heads that move from side to side. I thought they were pretty interesting. They may not be interesting and creative by today's standards, but the reason I like it is because the boss is only vulnerable when its faces come together.
I thought that was cool.
Yeah, that's the only time that you can damage them, but they will continue to shoot at you regardless of what phase they are in. And did it remind you of the Transformers logo?
No, it did not. But I
Really?
can see where you're coming from.
Which stage is this?
This is
Stage
base 2.
4.
Yeah.
So this is the end of
The second over the shoulder level.
Okay,
you have the two heads that float around, and I thought they looked very
I didn't think they
similar
looked
to
like heads. I
Transformers
thought
logo.
they just looked like two semicircle, like
Yeah,
dome
they
gun things.
It is very
Gun
much like
turrets.
either Transformers or like kind of like like they look a little bit like Cylons almost.
You're dating yourself because not a lot of people are going to know what a
well, you know
Cylon
what?
is. I know what it is.
They remade Battlestar Galactica. Come at me like that.
That's fair. That's fair.
They do though. Like if you Google the helmet,
I'm
Cylon,
You're
googling.
not wrong.
I'm googling what Cylon. Can you spell that for me?
Cylon.
While he's looking that up, we're going to move on to level 5, the snowfield. And right off the bat, I thought this level was extremely badass.
Wait,
because-
yeah. He's kind of nailed it with the Cylon thing.
Yeah, there you go.
Is it? Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
The one I
those
put in
are
the boss
Cylon heads.
there.
Yeah, I retract my statement about Transformers logo. It is a Cylon for sure.
There you go.
Yeah, when I was playing the game, I just thought it was like a trash can with a turret, but no, it's a Cylon head.
But killing off those Cylon heads will take you to the snowfield, and you have bombs being thrown at you from the wood line.
Yeah,
And
so BS.
Well, I thought it was an awesome touch because they're incorporating some real world combat tactics.
I know. I wasn't expecting that when I first got there. The first bomb, I thought it was gonna be like the kind of like the guy hiding in the waterfall where you can see him and like
Yeah, and
think it's coming. This nope. I'm like, wait, where are these bombs coming from? I can't shoot where they're coming from. And okay, all I gotta do is just run.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Is like once you realize Charlie's in the bushes, like you understand like where you can't stand.
Yeah.
And they do the bombs are a slow enough projectile where you can sort of pace yourself
Time it.
and yeah, you cannot die if you're.
You can double dutch it.
Yeah, it's not unmanageable, but it's certainly like just one more thing where it's like, oh god, now I have to deal with this on top of it.
I thought
Yeah.
that was great. And as you're progressing
it's
through the
fun.
level, anytime you see those trees in the background, you know what's coming.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Until the end where it comes with no trees. I think they're coming from behind a hill or something. I don't know.
I can't even remember the boss to this stage, and I didn't write it down, so it must have not been very important.
This was the guy, the big guy robot thing.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
probably
you get
why I
into
didn't
the
write it down.
next- You get into the next installation after the snow level, and then you have to go through like all the flamethrowers, right?
The energy zone. But that boss, are you talking? He looks like a giant alien football guy.
Yeah, he looks like a
Okay.
big robot football player.
Yeah.
This is where
And he
my
shoots his
game
hands.
ended multiple times because I could not figure out a pattern to him whatsoever.
At all. No, at all. And to be honest, for several attempts on this guy, I wasn't even sure if I was doing damage on him until I realized, oh, his color is changing.
Yeah,
But
it's one of those Ninja Turtles style things.
He doesn't start flashing. He just starts.
Yeah, he
turning
starts to
more
just turn
orange.
orange until he dies.
But he takes so many bullets. Like he was literally a boss where I'm sitting there, and I think everybody can relate to this, where you're holding their controller the normal way, but then when you need to mash that button, you flip your hand over so that way you can really tap on it, and like
Yeah,
this guy.
I put mine down on my lap.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you can just smash that button because he like he's a bullet sponge. He just takes so many hits.
And he will jump in these erratic patterns. So if you did not have the spread shot, you're not doing damage to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, the best way I found to take this guy out after like the 9th time I attempted it was if you can just keep jumping over him until he gets into like the repeating pattern of throwing out his little like murder Beyblade or whatever the hell it is that he throws out. Like if you can get him to like, because he'll get into the corner and he'll start jumping up and down and tossing those. Like you can get him in a loop where he'll do that and you can just waste him at that point. But it's very hard to like try to time that out. It was not fun.
My tactic was whenever he jumped, I followed him directly and stayed as close in as possible, and then just blasted him with the spread. So that way he was taking the entire spread. He was taking all 5 shots at once.
I had to restart from here at least twice. And then the third time when I got through, when I finally got to beat him and I was at the energy zone, I got there and I had 19 lives remaining.
Oh, so wow, nice.
I had burned through almost half of my Konami code. And this is the section with the flame pillars. And for me, when I was playing this, it was getting late. I was a bit tired, and I was probably rushing it. So there's probably a little bit of that going on. And I think if I'd been more patient, I might have been able to make it to stage 7. But I just had to call it a day. I went to bed and tried it the next day. But I was still losing like half of my lives because of that boss at the end of stage 5. He's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'll admit.
You're losing your marbles in the process.
And I'll just be honest to everybody, to you guys and all the listeners, I started using save states on the waterfall level. Like that is where my legitimate attempt stopped. So
for me, it was level 6. That's when I had to start using save states because I had burned, like I said, burned through nearly half my lives. And for some of the flame pillars, I just could not time my jump well enough, because if you get close to it, it will fire down at you or fire side to side.
And sometimes it doesn't. And there was a few of them. I swear it was messing with me, or I thought my game was glitching out, because there's some that don't trigger at all until you go to jump, and then every time it roasts you. Like, so you had to kind of like fake it out with a jump and then wait for it to go back up and then try to get under it. Like those flame curtains are awful.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with using save states. None of us are the hero that Cory is. But
I had a lot of free time this week. There was probably a solid 4 hours, like at the end of the day, every day, where I was just playing this.
Man,
oh nice.
Yeah, you would have to dedicate a lot of time to this.
Yeah, I'd probably put like a good 20 hours into this to get it through, like to one solid like playthrough that lasted like a half hour.
And if you want to use save states, do it. But if you don't want to abuse them, I would recommend maybe making a save state at the beginning of the level. That way you can go through and practice the stage repeatedly, because that's really the only way that you can learn this game.
Yeah. And that's what I was, to be fair, that is what I was doing for the most part up until the next level. And actually, no. Actually, I think it was this level, because the energy zone. And I should mention, like, this is also like the energy zone, much like you would guess from its name. It goes like all the other levels, you go from going into some sort of jungle outside environment through a base to another outside environment to a base to another outside the snowy field. And then the energy zone is this complete, I don't know what, like, is it like a robot factory or like a power plant? I can't even, I'm not even really sure.
It's an energy zone.
Oh yeah.
Blazes,
Now you're in the
blazes.
prefab world of hyperspace terror.
Now you're in the
Reinforcements
blazes of
pour in, and
Zero.
all appears hopeless. I don't. That's the manual's description of the energy zone.
Yeah, it's rough.
Well, after
Of
you beat
course,
it,
if you believe in miracles, maybe you'll make it.
yeah, you need a miracle at that point, but eventually you will get past it and you move on to stage 7, the hangar.
Oh, can I, there was one thing I took note of in the energy zone. Speaking
Yeah,
of
go
those
for it.
fire pillars, and one thing that totally I was not expecting this at all, because this the energy zone. This is a left to right platforming stage, and everything's all boxed in, and like there's a ceiling, there's floors and platforms that you're jumping around. One of the fire pillars that you have to avoid, it looks like the fire pillars are all kind of like coming out of these pipes or something. One of them, if you're on the top platform, you can jump out of the screen and over the fire pillar, kind of like Mario 1 style, where you can jump up past it out of the screen to get
Say
over a pillar.
what?
Yeah, yeah, and I discovered that completely on accident. But yeah, you can jump above the screen and land on the other side. And I just thought that was noteworthy. I thought that, yeah, I was not expecting that. It kind of, I got a kick out of it.
That definitely would have helped. I needed every little bit I could getting through there.
It was only in the one pillar, and if it helps, like if you go to play through this again, it was the pillar that it's on the top. There's 3 platforms, I believe, but the pillar is like the longest one in the map, where it goes all the way from top, like halfway down the screen. So that's super long one, and then there's a platform, a high platform on the other side of it. You can actually jump over the source of the flame to get to the other side.
Well, the next level is just a mess. Everything in this stage is out to get you. Spiked walls that will pop up right in front of you. There's even a minecart that you can jump on and ride it around, but if you jump off of it, it can hit you and kill you.
It will run you over.
There's giant metal claws that crash to the ground just to crush you. Not to mention all the enemies coming from literally every angle.
Yeah,
Everything in the stage is out to get you.
yeah. And it's this stage is a non-stop swarm of dudes. And I believe, is this also the stage where the guys start crouching back to fire at you?
Yeah.
Or was it the energy zone? I think it was this zone. I mean, the hangar zone, where
one of the two, where they'll get in the prone and start shooting at you.
Yeah. Whereas before, and I mentioned that to all the listeners, because previously, like when dudes shoot at you, you can go prone really quick to avoid their fire, and that was like my go-to way of avoiding bullets. When in this level, they also go prone and start shooting you. So now all of a sudden you have to jump over their bullets instead of being able to go prone to avoid them.
Like I said, it's a hot mess. But eventually you get to the end, and just like stage 1, it's another giant wall. Except this time it's like a D-pad above a door. I don't understand who's designing these bosses. And you know what? I should have mentioned it earlier, but all of these bosses have some weird names.
Do they have names?
They do. In the jungle and the hangar, it's just called the defense wall and the final gate. But for example, the snowfield, the Cylons that we were talking about, that boss's name is Dogra Goldath.
Okay.
Yeah. Here's some other names that I'm going to go through, and they all start with G. Garmak Lima, Gromades, Godumuga, and Gordia.
Where are you getting these names at?
Wikipedia, man.
Because yeah, I mean these like I've still got the manual pulled up. Like they're not in the manual anywhere, which means like.
And this might be the Japanese names to them translated, and I'm gonna talk about that in a second when it comes to the game's final boss. So, does anybody have anything about stage 7, the hangar, before we move on to the last level?
No,
It's very difficult.
But you did mention like the fortress, like the wall that you have to shoot, and the D-pad looking thing. I thought that D-pad looking thing in the base 1 and base 2, the way that you progress forward is that you have to shoot this. I don't know what it is, like these buttons on the wall, in order to blow up the wall. And I think in the hangar zone, like that D-pad looking thing, I think that was like the sideways view of one of those buttons.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
And then I didn't even think about the fact that, like, every time you blow up one of these walls as a fight, we go into the base, and then that's when you go into base one. You blow up another one that's going base two. Um, well, actually, technically at the top of the waterfall, you don't, like you said, the Japanese version, it's another one of those walls. But is
The
this
arcade.
final? Yeah. Oh, is that sorry, the arcade? And I mentioned, I'm like, oh, that makes sense because that, had that been the case, we would have been going into another base. So is the boss for the hangar zone basically the door trying to keep the alien layer trapped in or something? Or because I'm just trying to make
Your
sense out of
guess is as
this.
good as mine.
Yeah, I'm trying to make sense out of the storyline
I wouldn't
of this
bother.
game.
I wouldn't bother.
I wouldn't bother. And like I said, there's two different
That's fair.
storylines depending on what region you're in.
Yeah. Okay, so the hangar zone boss though is basically another one of these fortified doors that you have to blast through in order to get to the last level, which is the alien lair.
Yes, level 8, the alien layer, it is vastly different from the rest of the game, and it made me wonder if there had been more alien levels that had been planned or perhaps incorporated into previous stages and that had been scrapped because it just comes out of nowhere. But like you said, maybe it's part of the story that this is his final fortress and this is where he's keeping all of himself, and maybe that doesn't make sense, but we'll explain it in a second. In this level, it's very
Alien world.
yeah, it's just absolutely
Metroid.
alien compared to everything else. And very quickly, you come up on what you believe to be the final boss of the game. It is this gigantic alien head that looks just like the xenomorph, or very similar to the xenomorphs of the Alien franchise. And
Man, so many
this guy's-
things in the 80s ripped that off.
this guy's name is super badass. It's the Emperor Demon Dragon God Java. Unfortunately, in North America, they call him the Red Falcon.
That's what the Red Falcon.
That's super
Oh
exciting.
my.
How lame is
Ugh.
that?
Yeah.
How lame is that? You
I
go
thought
from
the Red Falcon was referring to like some like human general or something.
Nope, that's the Red Falcon. So you remember earlier when I said if you had looked at the manual and it talks about the Red Falcon's defenses?
Oh, well, that blows my story out of the water now because here I was thinking that like the alien was trapped by humans and they were trying to weaponize this alien thing, and these forts were trying to keep it enclosed to keep the alien in. But no, the freaking Red Falcon is the alien.
You done played yourself, son.
You beat the boss and you think, I'm done. I beat the game. That's all there is to it. But as soon as you beat him, the level continues. And now there's these alien mouths or faces on the wall that will spit out these little puffballs that move pretty slowly and then rapidly will home in on you and kill you if you're not careful.
Yeah, let's go with mouths.
Yeah, that's it's pretty suggestive, but
Yeah.
it looks like there might be faces to it. Who knows? It somehow got past, some reviewing board. But you get to the end of the game, and the final boss is the heart of the alien. It's this gigantic heart on the screen that you have to destroy, but simultaneously, there are, again, more ripping off from the Alien franchise. There are these
Completely ripping off
these
from the
alien eggs that are attached to the ceiling and the floor, and from them, face huggers burst out of them and rush at you.
from the top and the bottom, going across the ceiling and across the floor. So at first, you're getting swarmed with 4 of these face huggers at a time, and each time you destroy one of these sphincters that are pooping them out, you get rushed by one less. So
Yeah, you can minimize it, but they come at you so fast, and it's just so much going on at the very end. And this heart also has a separate name. Its name is Gomorrah Moss King. Beating the game in the NES version, at least, you will get the end screen where it says, "Congratulations, you destroyed the vile Red Falcon and saved the universe. Consider yourself a hero." Of
I
all of
do.
us here, you shouldn't. Of all of us here, Cory's the only real hero.
yeah,
beaten this game not only legitimately without save states.
It was a time. Okay.
I can't even imagine. I watched a couple speed runs of this game, and it just blows my mind.
There's no speed running for me. I'll tell you that much.
Well, even that's fair. And I watched two different speed runs. I watched one of the NES version just to see how nuts it is, and then I watched one of the arcade levels to see what was different. Understandably, the graphical fidelity is much higher with far more detailed character sprites and background, though I will say the animation in the arcade game looks very stiff. The music is similar to the NES version, but has some more instruments. The two base levels, and maybe I mentioned this earlier, the two base levels have multiple paths as well as a timer.
What? That's
when
cool.
you destroy a wall, you have the option of going left or right, and you can get lost.
Oh, that's even cooler.
The final level was drastically altered, and I haven't played the arcade version myself, even though I have the ability to in this Contra collection. And just looking at the enemy placement and just how different it is, it looks absolutely dreadful. It looks so much harder in the arcade. I don't even want to try it.
It'd be fun 2-player, I bet.
Oh, sure. I
This
bet
this game is not easier 2-player though. That's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would definitely help on the blast level though.
Oh, perhaps. Yeah, if you had somebody doing crowd control while you're just blasting away at the heart or the head.
Yeah.
So do either of you guys have anything else to add to this game? I think we covered most of it, but if you have something, let's go ahead and get it out here before we share our final thoughts.
All right, let's mention the music.
Is very difficult, and the music is fun.
The music is fantastic. It's some of my favorite music in all of Nintendo.
Really?
Yeah, particularly the boss themes and the basses.
That's exactly what I'm going to put in here. And when we come back, we're going to talk about our final thoughts. Welcome back, everyone. This is our final segment where we talk about our final thoughts. Chris, why don't you share what your thoughts are of Contra as a whole?
Well, on the whole, I think it feels pretty good. I would think this game was an epic game back in the day, super punishing, but I treat it in the same way now as like playing solitaire, where it's a super short game. The story, who cares about the story? Like a speed run is less than 10 minutes on this game. So when I say it's a short game, it is a short game. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of just one of those things where you can just kind of turn your brain off because you're focusing on patterns and dodging stuff. And it feels doesn't feel like I'm playing an adventure game. It feels kind of like I'm playing Minesweeper or Solitaire. It's weird. But I'm glad I got through it. I can't say that I beat it, because I used so many save states. So congrats to you on that pick.
Whatever, you got through it.
Yeah, I'm glad I saw the end of it. And I'm glad I made it through all the levels. And I mean, I literally just finished it while we were recording this. So I made it. I saw the end screen. I'm happy that I did it. And but yeah, this is probably not one I'm going to return to. Are there any sequels to this game?
There are a ton of sequels to this game.
Dude.
So I might check those out.
So one of them is Super C, which came out on the NES.
Yeah. Wait, was that NES or was that the Super?
Super C, it was renamed to Super C because they were trying to steer clear of the Contra controversy. That's a mouthful. But there's also titles for the Game Boy. There's also Contra Hardcore for the Sega. there's a lot of games that you can play out here. There's even modern sequels that are out on the Switch right now.
That'd be fun. And probably will feel right along the same the other lines of the others. What do you call them? Smash ups or
Shoot 'em
smushes?
Ups.
Shoot 'em ups. Yeah, but what's your abbreviation for that?
Shmup.
Shmups. So I think I bet you.
Well, a shmup is different from a side-scrolling shooter.
Right, but I mean, it kind of to me this had the same feeling
You're a side-scroller.
where my brain kind of takes this the same way as I do with a shmup, where you're flying through space and you're just avoiding being shot and you're moving forward, or the thing is scrolling for you. To me, it has the same sort of feel to that, where you're literally just scanning the entire screen the whole time for projectiles coming at you while dodging or moving out of the way of other stuff. Like it's
Well, Cory did call it a bullet hell at the beginning of this episode, and that's probably
because it is
the most accurate way to describe it. And I played it in this collection, and I feel that's probably the definitive way because it provides a lot of quality of life improvements that weren't available in 1988. And one of those, like we mentioned a few times already, is the ability to create a save state. I did my best to avoid using it or just abusing them. Making a save at the beginning of a level and being able to go back so you can practice is a huge improvement over having to fight your way through the entire game just to get to that one area that you struggle with. And maybe getting there with only a handful of lives to practice isn't fun for you. So make that save state and just practice away until you feel that you are having fun. And if you know what, if you want to do a save state every 10 seconds, do it. It's a
I
hard
don't know
game.
if you should do that, honestly, because that probably puts you in a lot of terrible situations where you're probably getting shot in the face. Like, oh, I
you
just
load back
saved
in and
it
there's a bullet.
as the bullet's coming at me. I'm gonna save it. Don't do that. Like every minute, maybe. Make sure you're in a good spot.
Oh,
You
man.
could screw yourself over, but my
totally
point
did.
is that just play the game however you want to.
I mean, video games are meant to be fun, right?
Exactly. This game has been out for 35 years now.
Yep. So it's older than a lot of you probably.
Yeah, I'm 39 years old, and this is the first time I've beaten the game, and I beat it using save states, and I don't feel bad about that. However, you decide to enjoy the game should not be based on someone else's opinion. But to talk about Contra itself, this game has been analyzed and replicated and recreated in so many ways. Unlike Doom, which pioneered the first-person shooter, Contra may not have been the first side-scrolling action shooter, but in my opinion, it certainly popularized them.
Yeah.
Well, and
the name alone, like everybody knows Contra.
Yeah, it's a household name, and as we've said, like it's so generic that like you can really just kind of replicate and relabel this and pull off, whatever you want with it.
And there are a lot of great Contra-like games out there, and a lot of games are compared to Contra. Just like Doom itself, games that were similar to it were called Doom clones back in the day. So, Cory, why don't you take us home? What are your thoughts about this game?
Don't. Like, it's really hard, guys. I would not hold it against anyone to, go ahead and use the Contra code to get your 30 lives to get through it. And if you really want to challenge yourself, I mean, so if you play through this and you really like take the time to study it and make like a real thing about it, like it is a simple enough game, but there's just a lot of different patterns and there's a lot of stuff going on, and it takes a lot of patience, and it was a real trial and effort sort of thing for me to get through. So I think it's a certainly a what's the word I'm looking for here, it's certainly like it's a classic, right? But I don't recommend anyone going back and really putting in the same amount of stupid effort that I did.
But I will admit, I do think like I'm way more impressed with you now, knowing that you actually did it. So
Yeah, that I'm insane enough to do.
So
yeah.
So if anybody's listening to this and they want some Chris Cool points,
our old nerd friends to be impressed.
Yeah. If you're sitting around with a bunch of your nerd friends and you can say I beat Contra without any cheats or save states, That's
Do it, kids.
that's bragging rights for the party.
In a certain crowd,
In my crowd.
I think in our
Most
crowd.
crowds, I think they'll look at you like
I'm
you
a
got
crowd of
3
one
heads.
though.
Well, there was something I wanted to bring up that you brought back a memory for me, Cory. So back in the day when we had discovered the Konami code, Cory, you called it the Contra code, and that's what
Yeah.
we called it as kids.
Yeah, that's because this is really the first one where you needed it. Like, no one was playing Gradius and was like, I wish I had a bunch of lives. Gradius is a great game, by the way, but it's certainly not one of those things where it's like, I will flip out if I cannot get through this level.
You're not wrong. Yeah, the Konami code was definitely popularized with this title as well. Man, Contra did so much.
Yeah,
Hey,
and it
speaking
reminded
of-
us of Demolition Man.
Hey, I know you don't have an answer, but if you could find this out, I would be super impressed. Could you use the Contra code on the Contra arcade cabinets?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so either, but
I don't know.
that would have been
I
amazing.
don't know if you would be like able to. That'd be very difficult with like a stick.
Yeah, I don't know if it was an 8-way joystick or not. I mean, I guess it must have been.
I believe it was because
Man.
you
Yeah,
can
it
jump
would have to
forward.
be.
You could jump forward in the air while you're playing this.
Well, yeah, and also the fact that you have to shoot diagonally in this game.
Yeah,
Which
Yeah,
a
you're right.
joystick
You're right.
joystick would have been so much more helpful. Like I was playing this on D-pad, and the D-pad I was using for some reason does not like shooting diagonally in this game.
Well, a lot of D-pads don't,
Yeah.
especially ones back in the day. So, was there anything else you guys wanted to add before we close this out?
Don't spend 23 hours on Contra from the hours of midnight to 3 a.m. And also go watch Demolition Man.
And Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Oh, that's not related to this. That was that was the Mario episode.
Well, guys, thank you both so much. Chris, I think you were the one that posted that image of Contra, and that's what kind of started this whole thing. So thank you both for taking the time out of your day to go ahead and play this, whether or not if you use save states or if you're Cory and you just He-Manned it.
Or a psychopath. So we haven't really discussed this at length, but we will be pushing Spyro back to, was it mid-March or the end of March? So what are we doing next?
Oh yeah.
That's a great point, and we did not talk about that. So I think that's going to be something that we discuss on our own, and I just go ahead and throw it up when we talk about.
So stay
post
tuned
that new.
to Twitters, and you can find out there.
Speaking of, I'm going to draw 2 more winners for those giveaway codes, and I have information on how you can join if you haven't at this point. So that will also be posted on Twitter. This episode's gone on pretty long already, so we're going to go ahead and close it out. You, the listener, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to us talk about a 35-year-old game. Until next time, everybody, thank you very much.